For a while now, I have been getting requests from viewers to do some earrings projects. And so I thought I would go ahead and do a pair of earrings. And perfectly, I started carrying Rivolis in our Jill Wiseman Design store. And a Rivoli is a perfect earring. A Rivoli is a sparkly Swarovski stone. At least the ones that I carry are Swarovski. There are also other, there are Czech Rivolis, and then there are Preciosa Rivolis, which is another crystal company. Their quality is not quite as precise as Swarovski. Swarovski is kind of like the creme de la creme, creme de la creme, that's what it is, brand. So that's what I'm carrying. And let me kind of bring you in closer so I can show you these earrings that I created for them. I am calling these the Audrey earrings because I think of Audrey Hepburn as being very classic, and I think of these as a very classic Rivoli design. And it's not difficult to do. You can make a pair of earrings in one evening. If you're a slower beater, maybe it'll take you two evenings, one per earring. And it doesn't take a lot of supplies either, which is really nice. So here I use the light turquoise Rivoli inside there. And this is actually what a Rivoli is. This is what it looks like. So it's kind of cone shaped. I'm going to show you kind of the side here so you can see that it's cone shaped on both the top and bottom. And so when all the sides here that come up to the point are faceted, so you get a lot of sparkle as that moves around. And then you get that interesting depth inside from the top of the point down. So these are some of the colors. I just kind of picked an assortment of pretty colors that I particularly liked of our Rivolis. But I have like 40 colors of these Rivolis. These happen to be the 12mm size that we're going to make these earrings out of. I also carry them in a 14mm and plan to add the bigger ones. And there's also one smaller size. There's a 10mm Rivoli also. So I will add those other sizes as I'm able to. It's always, you know, a juggling game as we're adding new product. What do I add next? So anyway, I think these are very fun to play with, and let's show you how to get these earrings bezeled. So I'm going to kind of move these out of the way here. So here's what I'm going to work with is these are amethyst, the amethyst Rivolis. And then you're going to need 3mm crystals, bicone crystals. That is going to be for the outside edge here on each of your earrings. This color right here that I have picked this is a new Swarovski coating. This is called Amethyst Shimmer 2X. So you can kind of see where it has kind of this really bright shimmer to it as this moves along. There are about 5 colors or so that I have these in both 3 and 4mm bicones in now, the Shimmer 2X. I just really love it. Size 11 delicas, we're going to need those for the bezel setting here, and then some size 15 seed beads. And again, you need very small quantities of these. I mean, like probably 2 grams, a gram or 2 of each of these is going to be plenty for you. So here's how we're going to get this started. I'm going to kind of move these off to the side here. I already started this a little bit. I used about 3 to 4 feet of thread. So I kind of just used a generous wingspan because I would always rather have too much thread than not enough. And I just hate using small threads as I get down to the end. So about 4 feet is about what I cut off. I strung 32 delicas here. And then I passed back from the tail end through about, this time I went through about 5 or 6 beads. Doesn't really matter, just enough that you've turned it into a circle here. Now, let me tell you about this number that I picked here. There are lots of charts and things online telling you how many delicas you need in a circle to bezel a Rivoli. And I see a lot of them that say that you need 28 or 30 delicas to bezel a 12mm Rivoli. I went with 32, and the reason is because I hate it when you have created this initial bezel with your delicas and you try to put the Rivoli in and it's so super tight that you can't get that Rivoli inside there. That just drives me insane. I honestly don't even know how on earth somebody manages to bezel a 12 millimeter Rivoli with starting out with 28 delicas, because honestly there's no way, given the tension that I use, that I could get a Rivoli in a 28 delica base. So I could probably get into a 30, but I know I can comfortably do it in a 32. And you'll notice it doesn't have, that 32 does not cause a problem at all with the security of this Rivoli inside the setting. So I'm going to go rogue on everybody else, and I'm going to say for our project we're going to use 32 here. Okay, let's start stitching. So the very first thing that we're going to do is we're just going to do peyote stitch around this ring, and I will walk you through it, but if you already know how to do it, you're just going to peyote stitch around. So it's picking up a bead, you're skipping a bead on the base for it to sit on top of, and then passing through the next bead. And I always put my finger over the beads when I'm pulling the thread through, just because that helps the tension. And what you want to see is that new bead that I just added is going to be stacked up on top of that one that you skipped. And we're going to do this all the way around. So we're picking up a bead, skipping one for it to sit on top of, and passing through the next bead. Pull, tighten. Especially on these first couple ones, you're going to have to pull kind of hard to get them to stack up nice and evenly there. The other thing about doing this is you will know at the end of this round if you truly picked up 32 or whether you happen to accidentally pick up an odd number like 31 or 33, because you will go to add that last bead in and you're going to have a problem. It's not going to be, there's not going to be a space for it. So it's unforgiving that way. As you're looking at your delicas and you're picking up the beads, by the way, this could also be done with Aiko's, which is the Toho fancy schmancy brand. They're quite expensive, but they're really, really uniform. But if you use the delicas, you kind of want to watch out to see if you ever, so every once in a while you'll find one that's extra thin and you don't want to use that. So here's actually a good example of that. Notice how the one on the right is super, super skinny and the one on the left is fatter. The one on the left is more of a normal delica size. And so I'm actually going to cull out that super skinny one because we don't want to use him on this project. It will, the space that we're using here is small enough that a minute difference like that can really make a spacing issue for you. And when we get to the size 15 seed beads, I'm going to show you exactly how true that is because believe it or not, what brand of size 15 you use will make a difference in your project. We can use them both, but you just have to be a little careful with your Tohos, and I'll talk about that when we get to that point. There are a million different ways to bezel a Rivoli, and so this is just one of them. And I will probably over time show you other ways of bezeling them in various projects and probably techniques and that kind of thing. And so if you learned a different way to do it, that's totally fine. There are many different ways to do this. Okay, so here I am with my last bead on this round. So I'm skipping one for it to sit on top of. This single one right here is the one that I want to pass through. But because this is the last bead of my round, I also want to do a step up through one of the sticky outies here that I created at the beginning of this round. So every time you finish a round, you have to do that step up, and that means you're going through 2 beads. So here's the one I'm skipping. I'm going through the low bead, and then I'm actually going to go through the high bead on a separate pull here because it just worked out that way. And then here I am. Let's see here. It's kind of twisting on me. Okay, so there's my sticky outie. that I will pass through. So now I'm on that outside edge. Right now everything's sitting flat. As we start the next round, things are going to start to cup up. So you want to actually encourage the cup up to happen. And we're actually already going to jump into starting to use our size 15 seed beads here. So here's the thing about the size 15s. A Miyuki size 15 seed bead is much skinnier than a Toho size 15 seed bead. So here is, again, is an example of that. The Toho is on the right. I'm sorry, the Toho is on the left. The Miyuki is on the right. So the gold one is the Miyuki. See how skinny that is compared to that Toho. You can use the Tohos. As a matter of fact, I did in this earring. What I had to do is, this first round, you can pick up any old Toho bead. But when we start the second and third rounds off of this, you want to look for the skinnier Tohos. And so that means you're going to kind of sort through your little Toho pile here and look. Just notice how with this one that I just picked up, that this one on the end here, close to the point, is a little bit skinnier than the full-size Toho seed bead. So you kind of want to create yourself a little pile of the skinnier ones, and on the rounds 2 and 3 you want to use those skinnier Tohos, and it will make a difference in how the little flower overlaps here will bend in and hold nicely. Okay, now you don't have to worry about that whole looking for the skinny ones with the Miyukis, because with the Miyukis they're all skinny. All right, so now we're going to just peyote around, and this time it's going to be easy because we've got our sticky outies to pass through, and we're using all size 15 beads as we do this round. And then the big thing that you want to do is, as you tighten, don't tighten outward because that's going to try to keep everything flat. You actually want to start tightening inward. So tighten so that you're trying to make this sit upward now, okay? And it'll take a couple of beads before it really starts showing that inward movement. But as you tighten, okay, notice how this is starting to sit up. What you really want to be sure of is that you are not continuing to try to keep it flat. Because if you keep it flat, it's never going to cup around. It's never going to create something that's going to go around your Rivoli. And did you guys know that I can bead really, really fast? You want to see me do it? All right, so I just took my last stitch of this round and I did my step up through the very first 15 sticky outie that I added. And notice how this is now basically the flatness is on the outside, and there it creates like little walls, and you can kind of get an idea of what this is going to look like by kind of just tucking your Rivoli inside there. But we're not done. We're not ready for that Rivoli quite yet. We are going to do another round of peyote using all 15s again. So this is where, because I'm using the Miyuki, I don't have to cull it all. But if I were using Toho 15s that are a little thicker, then I'm going to want to find those thinner beads and use the thinner ones on this round. So let's go back to beading fast again. Okay, so here I am. I'm ready to take my last stitch of this round. So I'm picking up that last bead, passing through the low gold, and then passing also through the sticky outie gold for my step up. Oops. Because I've been beading kind of tightly here. I've been getting it nice and domed. There we go. So now you can see where it's all kind of pulling inward nicely so that it will hold on to that chaton. So now what we want to create are these little indents, these little star indents that I love so much. I love the way that looks around the bezel. You could do just another round with all size 15 seed beads and then it would just be straight, but I love doing this kind of zigzag effect. So what we're going to do as we do this is, again, if you're using the Tohos, you want to use a skinny Toho, but you're picking up a bead and just doing a regular peyote stitch. And then on the next one, we're not going to put in any bead at all. So I'm actually going to pass through 2 sticky uppy beads at the same time here as I attach this one. And right about now, people are going, but your thread is going to show. Well, it's not, because what's going to happen is as I tighten this and as we go around, these 2 beads right here, that where my thread is showing between them, it all bends in and your thread gets sucked up in between there. Because look, I mean, you can't see thread here. Let me show you where the stitches that I just took. It's that thread is right between this bead and this bead. And then over here is between this bead and this bead. And see how they all kind of move inward and the thread does not show at all. So I don't want you to worry about that. So that means that you're only adding a bead every other stitch. So I'm picking up one, I'm passing through the next sticky outie and the next sticky outie. Okay, and as I tighten, again, I'm still encouraging it to tighten inward. And we're going to do this all the way around. So, through 2. It's like creating a little crown. I'm using quite a lot of tension as I do this to make this nice and tight. If you have a really flip-floppy, soft tension on a Rivoli bezel, what's going to happen is your Rivoli could potentially pop out. So this is a project that you want to use a nice, decent tension on. And I believe we are at the last one here. So I'm passing here, passing across through the second one. And, actually, you know what? That was my step up. I shouldn't have passed through that second one. It would be through the lower one and then that tip. There we go. All right. So that is the top part of our bezel now. So now we can put the Rivoli inside. You can kind of lay this down, put the Rivoli face down towards the 15s. And pull this across and see what that top is going to look like. Isn't that beautiful? Guess what? We're going to do the exact same thing on the back, because I think the backs of your projects should look nice too when it's an earring, because that's going to show on the back end of your piece. So we're going to actually do those exact same steps. So it's peyoting around once with the size 15s. Your second round with the size 15s, you want to go to a skinny Toho if you're using the Toho brand. And then your third pass around, you're doing every other seed bead as you go. So I will let you do the second half of this, and I will do my second half, and we'll meet back here and we'll add the embellishment. So here I've finished the top then, and it looks pretty as is, but wait till you see what it's going to look like with the Rivoli inside. Look how beautiful that is. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do the same set of steps on the back edge also. So let me show you here on the finished earring that, see how we have that same zigzag indent on the back, because you know that shows when you're wearing earrings also. You want that to be pretty also. But here's the one thing that you have to do is we have to have a point at which you put that Rivoli in and encase it. So some people at this point will just have you hold the Rivoli while you're doing the 3 rounds of 15s. Remember how we're going to do a single round with any old bead, and then the second round you have to use a skinny Toho or just a regular Miyuki. And then the third round is where you're skipping and doing every other bead. Also again with a skinny Toho or a Miyuki. Honestly, this one's fitting really nicely, so I could probably bead around with this sitting in it with no problem. But if you find it awkward to do that with the Rivoli sitting inside, like if it's always kind of moving around on you or trying to pop out or whatever, you can do the first round of 15s without the Rivoli inside. And then I actually will usually do at least like a third of the piece with the second round without the Rivoli inside. And then you can kind of insert that Rivoli inside and finish the second round of the 15s. By the time you add the third round of 15s in, everything's going to be folded over so much that that Rivoli will sit in place. So you have to have it in place by the time you finish the second round. So you can just kind of play with where it makes the most sense for you to put that Rivoli in and hold it. I think that with me, because this one is fitting so beautifully, it's going to be no problem for me to actually just put my finger over the Rivoli and hold it in place and work around. The one other thing that I will say is obviously you're going to have to move your thread down to one of those sticky outy delicas, because we finished at one of the tips up here with the 15s. You can actually just take your needle and go down straight on a diagonal, right down the diagonal route, column here. And usually I will do this one bead at a time, because trying to get through a whole slew of them on the diagonal can be a little bit of a trick. Although sometimes, yep, with the delicas you have big enough holes that you can do it. With the 15s, not always so much. And so here we go. Now this, having done that, it's now got me working in a different direction than I was working before. If that drives you crazy, here's how you fix it. As long as you are coming out one of the sticky outy delicas, you can just turn around and go right back through the delica to the side of it, and then through these, go through these 3, which brings you coming out of a sticky outy delica going in the opposite direction. So it's an easy turnaround at this point. So we'll go through those 2, plus the next sticky outy. Okay, and then the sticky outy, like so. And now I'm working in the same direction that I was working before. So that's how you can switch directions in this if you choose to. So I'm going to let you go ahead and work on your back section here and inserting your Rivoli, and let's meet back and we'll talk about all the embellishment. All right, so I've finished the back on my Rivoli, and let's take a closer look at what it looks like. So you can see here we've got those beautiful zigzags, indents, and my thread is kind of, let's see here, I think I moved it. Nope, I didn't even do my step up because I don't need to. I finished on that end. I still have my tail thread here. I meant to mention this before. At any point after you've finished that first side, you can go ahead and end off this tail thread. It's just kind of in the way. And I'm going to just leave it for right now so you don't have to sit here and watch me do it. But you could end yours off and with no problem. So now what I want to do is add the embellishment on this outside edge. And the first thing that we need to do is get to that center point. It's really easy to do because, to find the center, because here, if we look here on the edge, look, we've got the 2 delicas wide here, and then it narrows to a single, and then the 2, and then the single. Well, those singles are the center around the center of this Rivoli, and that's the one. We want to get to one of those center delicas as we are moving away from this back edge. So I'm just going to look here where my thread's coming out. It's coming out of this bead here. So I'm going to move myself through the beads, like so. Oops. And the next stitch will be through one of those center delicas. All right, so now we're going to work around that center, and we're going to do stitch in the ditch. And we've done this before in other projects, but if you haven't done it before, see this little line in between the two center delicas here. That's our ditch. It's the boundary between the two delicas that are side by side. It's that center section right there. There's our ditch. So what we're going to do here is we're going to pick up 3/15s. If you are using the Tohos, this will work best. If you can pick up the bigger ones for the outer two of your 15s, but again, if you use a skinnier Toho on that center, it'll just sit a little bit better. It's not a huge deal though, so I don't want you to stress over it. So picking up 3/15s, and we're going to jump from this center delica all the way over to the next center delica. That's called stitch in the ditch. And when you do that, it creates this little picot right here. So that center one will pop out and the other two sit flush to your delicas. And we're going to do that all the way around. So picking up 3/15s, passing through the next center delica there. And when you pull, you want to pull it nice and tight so that those sit nice and flush against the delicas. The other thing that it'll do is it'll really make, when you pull tight, it'll really pop that center seed bead out so it sits just perfectly the way we want it to. You do kind of want to watch for caught threads as you do this, because now you've got something that's sticking out and it's easy to hook a thread on those. So as I'm pulling, as I get down here, I'm kind of watching where that thread goes to make sure I don't accidentally hook one of those picots. And if it does a little bit, the Miyukis are working really nicely where they're sitting just nicely side by side. When I was working with the Tohos, sometimes one of these wanted to kind of sit behind the other a little bit. I didn't worry too much about that, because when we add the crystals, that's going to kind of take care of that for us. It's going to space everything out a little bit better for us. I almost feel kind of a pop when I get the tension just right and it pops into place. Very satisfying. One of those little seed bead moments that only us bead weavers would understand, the satisfaction of a pop as it pops into place. Okay, I've got one last set to add here. And as I do this, I'm going to go through the delica, and then I'm going to go up the first two beads on that picot, because I want to be coming out the single bead that's sticking out there on the top on the picot. So first step is to go through the delica. Usually, because of the angles, you're going to have to do this in multiple pulls. So through the delica, and then up through the side 15 and across the top 15. All right, so now let's take a look again, because I wanted to show you that even without adding the, this one doesn't really want to pop the way, there we go. even without adding the crystals, it's really pretty just as is. So if you would like a less embellished version, you could actually stop right here, and it's beautiful just as is. But we are going to go ahead and add some more sparkle. So let's go ahead and add in our 3mm crystals. And we're not going to add anything on either side of the crystal. So one thing to know about this is this round can be a little bit hard on your thread. So as you're doing this, you want to pull tightly so that it sits in between. But see how right here, see how the thread is showing right here and coming across the edge of the crystal. We're going to come back and reinforce this round because crystals can be nasty little thread cutters. So while you do want to pull tightly, you don't want to pull so tightly that you accidentally have that crystal cut your thread. So you kind of just want to get it set in place, and then when we go back and reinforce this round, we're going to be able to tighten it up quite a bit. So kind of making sure that it's in nicely. Because I used the Miyuki 15s on this earring, we're getting a little bit of extra spacing in there, a little bit more so than we did with the Tohos, which again makes that reinforcing round that much more important. Again, those minute seed bead differences can make such an impact even when you're working on, you know, this kind of scale. It's kind of funny. I tell you what, 15 years ago, if somebody had told me I'd know this much about the minutia of seed bead sizes and the effects on bead weaving projects, I would have laughed and laughed. All right. So let's take a look. Oh, look how pretty. Oh, I love those shimmer AB2X or shimmer 2X crystals. Oh gosh, look at all that flash that you get off of them. Holy cow. This is the first time I've used them in a project and I'm just so in love. Wow, wouldn't that be a pretty ring? We need to make a ring out of one too. Okay, so sorry, I'm just having a moment with my crystals. At this point, I would go through and reinforce that whole round. So going through the 15 and the crystal and the 15 and the crystal. I'm going to not do that right this second because how boring to watch me do that. And I do want to show you how you turn this into an earring instead. But do not skip this step of reinforcing. It's really important. I guess what I'll do is I will actually go through a couple of them just to kind of show you what a difference it makes. So I'm coming out of this 15. We're going to go through a crystal and a 15. And when you do that, now all of a sudden you're going to be able to pull a little bit tighter. Things are going to sit a little bit more the way we want them to. And your crystal is a little bit more secure because now you've got 2 passes of thread through there. It's just, and they're not going to be as wobbly, because one thing I did notice when I was, having my crystal moment was that they're a little wobbly right this second. So now, I mean, look at that. You can even tell just by, see how they're kind of sitting back a little bit. These are all the wobblies, and these are the 3 that I just reinforced, and it makes a difference in professionalism and how it looks. So then the last thing that we need to do is create a little loop so that we can put our ear wire on. And what we want to do is create that little loop at the back of the earring. So I did it right back here. We're going to do it off of a Delica, and we're just going to be picking up 8 size 15 seed beads to create the loop. And so let me get us into place. So we want to be coming out of a Delica. I You need to navigate down the picot. Let's see here. There we go. And then down to one delica. I'm probably getting my head in the way, aren't I? There's that one that's right below it. And what I want to do is grab, yeah, so that's perfect. So I want to use the delica that is just right at the base of where those picots were being added. So right there is where my thread's coming out, right at the base there. And so this is where I'm going to pick up 8 size 15s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I can't help myself. I sit there and clean up my board as I'm doing it. I'm coming out the right side of that delica, so I'm going to go in the left side of the delica. Now, as I do this, you need to know what kind of ear wire you're putting on this. In my case, these ear wires actually will just loop onto the loop itself. So let me kind of show you how this works. This opens up a little bit. This is a base metal, so it's nice and soft and it will move nicely. And then I just kind of threaded it on the hook, okay? So all I had to do was do this and this. Oopsie, and I put it on backwards this time, and then I would just close this up, and that's how to connect it. Your ear wire may open and close differently. So if you need to, you can attach your ear wire through before you pass through the delica here. So if I had a different kind of ear wire, say that didn't open up, at this point I would want to pass my needle through the hole that's meant for that, and then pass through the delica then, so that you have the ear wire attached, okay? So some you can attach afterwards, some you can't. And then this loop right here, you want to reinforce 2 more times, because this is a connection point and it's going to be a point of wear and tear on your earring as it, you know, dangles and moves forward. I will also point out that I made this a pretty short little loop, so that I made these earrings, let's use the one that I don't have backwards. I made these pretty close. They sit pretty close to the bottom of your ear there. So if you wanted to, you could make a longer loop or a more decorative loop and make these sit lower on your face, you know, on your neck. So you could make this longer if you wanted to. And this would be the place to do it, is as you add that loop in there. And then after you've reinforced your loop, and then you can just go and end off that thread, and you have yourself a new pair of earrings. Well, at that point you've got one earring, and then you have to do the whole thing again and make the second earring. And then evidently now I need to make it into a ring too. So but this is a very classic bezel style for a Rivoli. I didn't break any new design ground here doing this, but you know, it's classic for a reason, and it's because it's simple and it's easy and it's beautiful. And so, and it's also something that you can do really quickly. I hope you enjoy working with these Rivolis. I have to admit, back in the early part of my career, I always swore that I would never work with a Rivoli in my entire career. And the reason was because everybody was doing it. It was kind of the new hot thing when I first started bead weaving. And I just decided I was going to be different, that I had nothing new to add to the world of beading with a Rivoli. But the truth of the matter is, we've got a lot of new cool bead shapes and styles, and honestly, the art of bead weaving has come a long way in the 15 years that I've been bead weaving. So maybe I do have something new to add to Rivolis after all. I hope you enjoy your new earrings. I can't wait to see what you guys make. You can share pictures of what you have created, your colorways and that kind of thing, in Jill Wiseman Designs Beaders group on Facebook. There's a lot of us there. We'd love to share our projects and our ideas. I also wanted to mention that I will have kits available in various colorways for these earrings on my website at jillwisemandesigns.com, and I'll pop a link up for that so that you can find those. Happy beading!